thank you so much for joining me on Griffith's Grounds. You have a really interesting background.
That's one way to describe it.
Depending on who you talk to, right?
Yeah.
I find it intriguing. You tell me a little bit about yourself, where you've been in the past 10 years?
Oh, in the past 10 years. Well, a few years back, I moved out here because I actually got offered a position with Magna Powertrain, running their front test garage. I was the lead engineer out there, and so, I'm a big nerd, so here are the keys to a huge physics lab. And I was having a good time there, but then they decided to move out to Detroit, and I kind of liked Central New York, so I decided to stay here. But since then, I've gone through a bunch of jobs, doing work for different companies. But primarily, I'm going to call it a problem solver. That's the best way to describe it. Because even at Magna Powertrain, we were working on things, and it's like, hey, what doesn't work? And so I'd fix it or come up with a solution for it. And that's kind of what I've done my whole career. And so I moved out here, was working on for a few different companies, developing products for them and working with them. And then all of a sudden, a few years ago, unfortunately, we had a house fire. And luckily, not extensive damage, just a little bit property damage, none of our belongings, luckily. But in the rebuilding process, I want to get, tech out. So I went to track down a wireless thermostat because I was going to do a radiant system throughout the house, and it's like 13 zones. And I don't want to run wires for all of that. I could not find a truly wireless thermostat. They all required wires from the thermostat to the furnace.
Right.
And that's ridiculous. So I started looking around and I couldn't find it. So I started playing around with it to make one on my own. But then my daughter was on an internship here at Griffith's, and she said, hey, we're doing this thing called Coffee and Concepts. You should come to it. Well, being dad, I showed up for it. And everybody that was there and was talking. And in the process, I got introduced with the coordinator for the Hustle program, Seth. And he said, hey, what are you doing? So I told him, and he says, oh, you should join our Hustle program. And I'm like, what's a hustle? Dude, hustle. And he'll appreciate that. And so he says, well, look it out on their website. So I did, looked at it. It was all this Department of Defense stuff. And I came back and said, I'm not the Department of Defense. And I still remember he said, well, you don't think they have heat in any of the barracks? I straight out told him none of the barracks I was ever in had heat in it or air conditioning. But then he kept on encouraging me. And so I applied for the Hustle program and was accepted and learned a lot. Because my daughter was prodding me. I got to give her props on that, is that for 30 years, I've been developing products for companies, big companies, and making them money. And she goes, why aren't you going to do it for yourself? And so I started doing this. And so we actually entered in the Hustle program with basically a concept and didn't even have a DBA, doing business as certificate. And now we're an LLC, and we're working on developing the product and getting it out in the market. But besides just the thermostat, they stretch my imagination and my vision here. That's the nice thing about the Hustle program. Everybody here is trying to encourage you and make you successful, sometimes in spite of yourself. And so it morphs from a wireless thermostat to a long-range communication system.
Okay.
As in, this thing will communicate miles. And because that was one of the biggest challenges, people don't have a wireless thermostat in the house, because if you lose communication, on a critical system like your heat in upstate New York in February, it could be catastrophic. So this system actually works. In a home situation, I haven't found dead spots. It's worked very well. But then all of a sudden, well, what else can you do with it? Well, I know sensors. So it's like, okay, what kind of other sensor can we put on the end of this? And it's that growing and growing and growing. And I quit asking people what else I could apply it to, because I got to get one done before I work on getting 20 or 30 done. But it's simple things like last night I was out to dinner and the waitress was having problems because the real fancy, the wireless data entry for going around the whole place. but they actually had an outdoor patio. And he says, yeah, when we go to do the back tables over there, it doesn't reach.
Your mind is thinking.
There's another application for this. So it's just things like that. So I got to do it and get it done. That's what I've been focusing on here. And that's the other thing about this place. They encourage us. They convinced me to actually have an office here at Griffiths. And they periodically check on me. They support me. And any questions I have, because it's usually business-related questions, because I'm the tech guy.
Yeah.
I never really, some people, I want to own a business. That was never me. I want to be the tech guy. I want to be the CTO, not the CEO, but sometimes you do what you got to do. So.
And you have an engineering background.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Where did you go to school?
I graduated from SUNY Brockport, although I've taken a lot of classes at RIT and quite a few other places in my past.
So a lot of that was applicable to not only the work that you produce for other corporations, but it gave you that skill set and that knowledge. Were you comfortable applying for Hustle, knowing that you had that skill set and expertise? Do you feel like it was, out of your comfort zone, or?
Completely out of my comfort zone. Because again, that I don't like doing the paperwork part of it. And being the CEO, you're responsible for all that, especially when you're starting out. Yes, my wife helps me out. And my daughter, she's phenomenal with the marketing. And the other daughter is really good at coordinating textures and colors and stuff like that for the actual product, which I'm your stereotypical guy. Yep, it works. It's done. It doesn't look pretty. Don't care. It works. So they all work together to help me on that, to support me, to make me successful, which is a key. But eventually you grow large enough where you can have somebody who likes doing that kind of stuff. Or there are a lot of companies out there in this area even that are, because they send me emails all the time, we'll take care of the business side for you. When I get big enough where I can afford that, I'll either hire somebody or I will outsource it.
Yeah. Do you find the community here that is from the coffee and concepts that you first started originating in with to the Hustle community supportive?
Oh, completely. It's really amazed because I grew up in a different culture. When I started at a big company in Rochester that's not that big anymore. But if, the director of a division knew your name, that just meant you goofed up really big. They didn't know the people who worked for you. Yet around here, from the top down, we'll say hi to you, stop by, they'll ask you how you're doing, they'll give you assistance. They just almost bend over backwards to help you be successful and to encourage you.
Yeah. Do you mind going into your time during Hustle, from the time that you applied to the time that you had to pitch? So from what I'm hearing, you're the guy behind the scenes, coming up with the solutions, wanting to tinker with everything. You're a very extroverted individual when it comes to one-on-one conversations, but how did it fare knowing that you had to go outside your comfort zone a little bit and then pitch for prize money that was pretty substantial?
Yeah, that was scary. But then actually it kind of went back. Well, when I was working in Rochester, I was so bad at public speaking. They sent me to the Dale Carnegie School of Public Speaking.
Did they really?
Yes. And I started out, if we're talking like this, I was fine. But if I just had to stand up and present to you, I would be shaking head to toe. There would be sweat just streaming off my back. And it's always been this way with me. Even though you think that I'm an extrovert, I was never really that person that's the spotlight person. I marched in drum corps for years. I enjoyed being a part of that group and being part of the sound. I ended up being a soloist, so, I can do it. But going through and having to do the pitches, and they drill you, they have you practicing elevator pitches. And if you talk to any of the guys in there, I laid eggs more than I ever did very well. But it was kind of funny on pitch night walking in there. I'll be honest with you, there were 4 judges, I think, and a timekeeper. And I literally just blurred them right out. I couldn't even afterwards, I couldn't tell you male, female, anything about them. They were just blobs there. And that was the whole idea, because then I could just walk back. I'm just talking in general. And flipping back to my drum corps days, by doing that, then because I practiced like you wouldn't believe. So then I could just do the pitch. And fortunately, it came out the way it was in my mind, which is always a good thing.
It's always a good thing.
Yeah. And so we ended up splitting the big prize money with another company.
How much did you end up winning?
$50,000.
What were you able to do to benefit your business with that $50,000?
Well, believe it or not, I still have more than half of it, because I'm a Scrooge with my money. But I've been developing the different sections of the whole system with proto boards to begin with. And there were some of them, because I've completely self-funded it, other than the $50,000. And it gets expensive because there's, like a dozen different sections. So you can end up spending a couple $1,000s just on the proto boards, then the software to support it. And we're getting ready to do the layouts for circuit boards and actually start making a custom system now, which, again, that's thousands of dollars to do that too. So we've been able to do that and been moving along.
We never even mentioned the name of your business.
Who cares? No.
I care.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good one.
Yeah, well, actually, that was a collaboration between my two daughters. Came up with accessible automation, because the whole idea is we're automating a lot of things. We're making it accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
So spending a lot of time on the user interface so that you don't have to be a tech genius to do this. It's intuitive. And we're doing it by taking it to people that are not technical and say, here, use this. And because it's better for me to go through aggravation once and then have everybody else being able to use it easily because that's the important part. Yeah. I've seen so many projects developed in my life that, it's great for the programmer and for the manufacturer, but it's a royal pain for the user. And so it sits on the shelf more most of the time. So the idea is make this so that you want to use it.
What do you think is next for accessible automation? What's in the future? Are you able to talk about any of the projects that you're working on now and near future?
Well, we're working on the over-the-air updates because of the way the communication system works. It's what's out there is a little clunky, and it's kind of hit and miss whether it works. So you can't build a product on that. So we're bulletproofing that. We've been working, part of going all the way through to the cloud is done. But one of the key parts of this is if you lose your wide area network, if your spectrum goes down, your cellular, whatever, this system needs to operate all on its own. So there's a secondary processor going on, and all the code and synchronizing the code and buffering the code until the wide area comes up. So then it'll just pick right up and go again. It sounds really easy to do, and it's a great little concept, but that's what I'm working on.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you see outside that are going to maybe be in your way that you have to kind of jump over these big hurdles?
Are you talking technical-wise or business-wise?
Business-wise.
When we get into production, so we're actually marketing things, going from the onesie Tuesdays to scale up. I do have a pathway laid out. I've been working with Progress Industries, which is a company here in Utica. Well, actually, it's all over central New York that employs special needs people. And they actually run warehouses, and they'll do packaging for you. So it's really neat opportunity working with them. And so they're willing, and they're waiting. They're looking forward to doing business with me so that they can do all the warehousing. But then the challenge with doing that is you have to have all the computer system and the database all set up so that it's okay. Put this together, mail it out.
Yeah.
So, but that's exciting working with those people. They're very enthusiastic.
Would you have ever imagined this 15, 20, 25 years ago that you would have owned your own business?
No. No. Because it's a big risk. Because it's, as this thing seems to be growing, once it takes off, the rewards are going to be well worth it. But all these years I've been working, being successful with other companies, it makes, as far as the technology part, it's, yes, I will get there. I've done it on too many other projects already. But the pathway there and the cost, having to worry about budgets, because I'm your typical engineer.
Yeah.
I mean, even at the big companies, when they put up the department budget, I looked at that as my goal to spend all of that money. And now I got to be the person with, well, if I buy that, I can't do this, or this. So you have to, grow up.
More practical add to there. What kind of advice would you give to the next generation coming up?
Well, it's kind of neat you say that because and my kids are 22, 20, and 18 now, and I've been encouraging them to learn how to run a small business. The days of going to work, like my dad worked 43 and a half years at Kodak. My grandfather worked 26 years there. I did 15 years there. But the days of, graduating from school, graduating from college, and then working in a company, cradle to grave, does not exist anymore. And if you look at the successful people, they're the ones that are doing their small businesses and supplying needs for people one way or another. And I mean, whether it's plumbing, about plumber, or landscaping, or carpentry, or if it is nursing, if you look at the ones that are off on their own, taking the risk, there's great rewards on that. Because otherwise you can be like so many people that work 20, 30 years at a company and die before they even retire.
Yeah. I think the mentality of cradle to grave is something that kind of needs to sit like on the back burner and maybe just kind of fizzle away. I like to see it, and we talk about it here sometimes, of like pupil to professors or professionals, right? So creating those pipelines and those pathways for the young students so that they can see what's available to them and become a young professional themselves in certain areas. When I say that, because I've seen you here on the Innovative Advancement Center campus, mentoring young students, other hustle participants coming in, and then more recently, some of the STEM camps coming in and actually mentoring and teaching a class. Is that what you like to do in your spare time as well?
Well, it's fun. Even when I was going through school, tutoring, because, I was older going through school, and you're teaching kids, and all of a sudden that light bulb moment, it's so cool. And I still remember when I was helping this one person, and all of a sudden the light bulb went on. Well, if we can do that, we can do this, this, and this. And they just leapfrogged like 4 feet ahead of me, which is one of the cool things, because I've been coaching and mentoring robotics teams for over a decade. And the kids at first, especially when they start out, they're like, well, how do I do this? I drive them up the wall. The answer is always the same, with style and finesse. They get mad at me, they go pout, and then they go to work. And 9 times out of 10, they come up with an idea I would have never thought of. And what's exciting is even half the time that idea works. But we learn more from our failures than we do from our successes.
Isn't that true?
And that's the thing, is when it doesn't work, they go to rip the whole thing apart. And I try to slow them down and say, what worked? What didn't work? What didn't work? What do we have to tweak to make it work? Because very rarely is something 100% wrong.
Yeah.
And so that's the fun part of that, is getting that going. So,
What's good? So if we switch gears from STEM campers and Lego robotics, what kind of advice would you give to up-and-coming software engineers?
That's a hard question. Not to pigeonhole yourself, because I have not, and it's been very useful. I'm kind of an old schooler, I know, because I'm an old guy, but I make sure that I've never wanted to be just strictly the guy sitting there coding. I've always wanted to work with hardware and everything else, and not to be ignorant of the other, But I actually prefer that working from the hardware in. That's when I first got into doing software, because I was electronics to begin with, is that the program was taking from the sensor into the analysis and then displaying, doing the data manipulation. But knowing more, because more and more people are doing it at the higher level. And unfortunately, it's great for, the routine stuff. But when it doesn't work, that's why a lot of programmers do like Linux, because when something doesn't work under the hood, you can go under the hood and fix it, which you can't do in other programs. But you have to know what you're doing to do that. So many people nowadays, I don't even want to say kids, that's a very poor thing to say, but they just know, oh, I put these commands down and they automatically work. But what happens when they don't?
So that critical thinking.
Yes. I'm doing a lot of embedded work, and because I need size and power limitations, and so you have to get right in there, but most of the people nowadays don't know how to get down to the brass tacks.
Interesting. What do you do on your spare time? If you're not engineering, you're not mentoring students, you're not building your own company.
Well, it seems like lately all I've been doing is working on cars, because I started my career out as a mechanic. But I have a nice piece of property down by Turning Stone. I have like 30 some odd acres. And I just enjoy hanging out there, whether it's cutting wood or clearing a trail or having a bonfire or just listening to the crickets. It's kind of fun just to hang out there.
Nice. Is there anywhere particular in upstate New York that you like to go visit outside of your home?
I used to spend a lot when I first came back from overseas, because I was in a very remote area. Then I went to work at Kodak, where there were like 12,000 people, it seemed like, in the building. On the weekends, I would just head up to the Adirondacks and be gone off in the woods for 3-4 days at a time, all by myself.
Nice.
So, yeah, I'm a naturist. I like to being out there and just gone.
Nice. Before we wrap up, Greg, is there anything you would like to go ahead and say that we haven't touched on that you'd like to mention about accessible automation, your family, the area?
Well, I kind of drifted off when I was talking about the kids. All my kids I've encouraged to learn how to do a small business. My son's a senior this year, and I'm encouraging him to get a business, even if it's a 2-year degree, just so you're aware of how to do it. And that puts you in a position no matter what you end up doing, whether my one daughter wants to be a vet. Well, she'll know how to run her own business and do billing and all that fun stuff. But don't be afraid to take that risk. And because that's another thing I encourage my kids, especially when you're younger. Yeah. So what if 100% of it turns to poo? You're young, you're recoverable. You can go out, fix it, learn from it, and go on. But you look at the successful people, and all the top big guys. I'll stay away from politics, but Elon Musk, how many times did he fail on the way up to the top? And any business owner, it's not unusual for them to goof it up 3 or 4 times before they get it right. And but the idea is they kept going.
Yeah, you never give up.
That's it.
You learn and move on.
The Thomas Edison, you failed 10,000 times before, or 9,000 times before you invented a light bulb. Oh no, I found 9,999 ways it didn't work. And he just kept going. Unfortunately, my intern this summer, that's the other thing, is this place supplied me with an intern to help me this year. And I tasked him with the over-the-air updates. I thought it'd be very simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, he found about 18 different ways it doesn't quite work. And that was the biggest thing, actually, and he was a great person, because I kept on encouraging him, because he was getting, failure because it didn't work. Yeah. Our idea is to get it. You're pushing it further down the road.
Yeah.
Now I don't have to go through any of those iterations, and you found areas that these parts do work. So our society gets caught up on all the negatives. You got to make sure you keep focused on the positives, and that's in everything. And so he found a lot of ways that areas that it worked, and how we had to implement that and go forward through all those failures.
Nice. Some good sound advice too on there. If somebody wanted to reach out to you for your services, to find out how they can learn more about you, what's the best way that people can reach Greg?
Well, we have a website or the accessible automation. You can Google that. We also, we're located here at Griffiths. We're on LinkedIn. We're on X. I believe my daughter has that set up. And accessibleautomation@gmail.com, or our phone number is 315-264-5158.
Gotta memorize.
What? Yeah. And we're pretty much now just show up here, and I'm usually around here someplace now.
You're always at a Coffee and Concepts.
I think I've missed 2 since it started.
Not bad. So we'll see you on the first and third Thursday of every month
Yes, ma'am.
between 10 and 11.
Yes.
All right. Well, Greg, thank you so much for taking this time with me and letting us hear a little bit about accessible automation, your background, and what to kind of expect in the near future.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you to our sponsors of Griffiths Grounds, Utica Coffee Roasting Company, who supplies us with the caffeination that we need to keep curious. Also, a special thank you to AMP Master Imaging, who always provides us with the top-notch apparel and promotional items to keep us looking our best and put our best brand forward. Until next time, stay curious, stay caffeinated. I'm Melissa Tolman. This is Griffiths Grounds.
My favorite blend is Sumatra.
My favorite blend is Adirondack Dark.
I love all the flavored coffee.
Colombia was my favorite for a long time, but Brazil Serato has taken that over.
Adirondack blend and the cannoli.